All right, coaches, again, thanks for joining us. Our next presenter here at 4:00 is the assistant head coach and defensive coordinator at Round Rock Westwood High School in Texas. That is Coach Kyle Coates. Coach, take it away.
Awesome, Coach. I appreciate you having me on. I'd be remiss if I didn't start by just thanking the Intentionally Grounded Foundation for putting on this clinic, for asking me to be a part of it. I think that mental health is something we should spend a lot of time talking about, and we don't spend near enough time, if any, talking to our athletes about that. I personally have dealt with some issues with some friends growing up that, took their own lives going through stuff like that. And so I make sure, on a daily basis, coaching high school kids, coaching college kids, what have you, talking to them about how they're doing, how are things going at home, telling them I love them. And just really trying to invest in the person a little bit more so than the athlete. Just letting them know, again, it goes back to that old coaching saying, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So if I can click through here. There we go. All right. So I just want to thank you again for having me on. I'm going to touch on today, and I'll lead by kind of giving a little bit of my background, but I'm going to touch on leadership, how to identify leaders, and then how to work to start building leaders on your football team. So a little bit about me. Like Coach said, I'm currently at Round Rock Westwood as the assistant head coach and defense coordinator. I've been here for 2 years. My journey actually started at Hardin-Simmons University. I played at Trinity University in San Antonio. Took a year off of football and went and actually lived in New Zealand for 6 months. Kind of backpacked, did the whole hostel thing, traveled around, and then decided to get into coaching after about 6-7 months away from the game. And I was lucky enough that first-time head coach Jesse Burleson at Hardin-Simmons University gave me the opportunity to come on and work with the defense and the special teams in a graduate assistant role. And if I told you I got a crash course in football, I mean, it was an understatement. I worked for a guy by the name of Bob Fellow, who had been 20-plus years, Division I, all levels of coaching and of college football. Actually you go back and the one thing he used to always joke about was Nick Saban was his roommate in college when they were at Kent State. And so very high football acumen, learned a lot. And like I said, I got a crash course in football that first year. From there, I got hired back at my alma mater, Trinity University, where I was the outside linebackers coach and worked with the special teams in 2012. And then after that 1 year away, I guess I did such a good job as a GA that I got called back to Hardin-Simmons to be a special teams coordinator and DBs coach, which is an opportunity I jumped at, getting to work with a lot of those young kids that as a GA, I really kind of had my hands on and had impact with, that were now going to be juniors and seniors. Was a really cool experience. So I went back there for 4 years. The one I left off was I went to ETBU as a defensive coordinator and was there for maybe a cup of coffee, about 3 months. And, as sometimes goes in our profession, I got offered an opportunity of a lifetime. I grew up in Austin. My mom went to UT. We've been Longhorns since I was, in diapers. And I got an opportunity to go and be a defensive analyst with Craig Niver and the safeties. And so I jumped at the opportunity. So I was on Coach Herman's staff for 3 years there. And then in 2020, as the pandemic hit, I was looking for other opportunities. A lot of things were kind of shutting down at the time. And I got reached out to by Anthony Wood here at Round Rock, which is just down the road. You people aren't familiar with Austin. Round Rock is probably about 20 minutes away. It's right around where I grew up. My parents still live here. My wife and I, at the time, were about to get married. And so I made the decision to transition into high school and become a defensive coordinator and assistant head coach. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit of a rundown there. So I'm going to start just talking about how we identify leaders. There's thousands of ways you can kind of go through this. Everybody has their own kind of set script. These are kind of things that I've seen done throughout my career by some really effective head coaches and leaders. And I've kind of just jotted notes as I've gone through. But the three things I always think first and foremost when you're trying to identify leaders, right? You start with competition, because you want to know first and foremost that your leaders on your team are the best competitors, right? You don't want a guy that's going to bow out, that's going to hang his head when he loses, that's not going to want to go for more every single opportunity. So we put competition into our offseason, into our spring ball early and often. You can see there Battle of the Battalions, which I'll touch on later. Basically, we make our entire offseason about competition, put our guys in teams, keep points on everything from attendance, how they're doing in their classroom, and then how they do in the weight room and out in competition. We have winner loser days. So we make it basically, hey, somebody's going to win this and somebody's going to lose this, and you don't want to be the loser. And then boot camp, or days that are built for failure. You want to see how your players react when there's, in the back of their minds, they're going against an unbeatable task, right? Are they going to bow out? Are they just going to hang their heads and just try to get through it? Or are they going to try to overcome those odds? Daily actions. I think as a coach, you have to go through and watch daily how your players interact with each other and with the coaching staff. So I sit there as I work with our strength conditioning program. And as our guys are going through strength conditioning, I constantly jot notes like, hey, this guy's always bringing juice. Hey, this guy constantly needs encouragement. Hey, this is a guy who I see trying to skip reps. Constant things that you can take notes on that now when it comes to those tough decisions of, hey, do I play kid 1 versus kid 2? Well, I've got notes on all those kids. So I know deep down, like, hey, kid 1's, the kid I was struggling with, I was having to coax up most of the time to try to get his work done. Kid 2 is the guy that's always bringing juice and the kids look up to him. All right, well, I can tell you who the leader of those two is. So building that within your tough workouts, your challenges, and then goes back to when you're looking for leaders, you want that guy that wants to take that extra step, who's putting in extra work, spending that extra time trying to get better in everything he does. And then I always put on the bottom there, like, is he a guy that goes in there and gets the work by himself, or is he always in there with other people? Does he bring people with him? Because I think it goes back to that same theory of you're not a leader if you don't have anybody following you. So you're getting those people to buy in and want to do that extra work with you. Communication, I think, is huge. Obviously, you got to watch and listen to see how kids communicate and interact with each other. But then also, how do kids handle when the coaches aren't around? Are they that same kid when I'm sitting there talking to them early in the morning before workout? When we leave and let them go to the shower, they turn around, dropping F-bombs, doing all kinds of different stuff where they're the kind of the Jekyll and the Hyde. Hey, in front of me, you're the greatest kid I've ever met. I want to put you in the game. The second you leave, I wouldn't let you go on a date with my daughter, So you look for those constant interactions, not only with the teammates and the coaches, but also kind of how do they motivate themselves and how do they encourage themselves to work harder? You don't want your leaders to be those guys you're constantly having to pull it out of. You want it to be those guys that are pulling it out of the other people. So 3 things just really quick I wanted to hit on there. So the next thing I'll touch on is really going through our 3 phases of developing leadership, right? I think the first one, it goes into that first 2 to 3 weeks of the off season. In my mind, it starts basically from January when we get back from the winter break, right? Or if you're a team that wasn't fortunate enough to make the playoffs, really it can start right there at the beginning of December. And you start building in your model of evaluation, right? From whatever characteristics of leadership you're looking for. I hit on 8 of them here. And if we have questions, I can go into more detail, but I just kind of wanted to briefly summarize these as we go through. But the evaluation period, in my mind, can be as little as 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes I've seen it done where it's a month and a half to where you really kind of start to hone in, all right, who are my 10, 12, 15 leaders that I want to start building from, right? But I'm going to dive in real quick in the evaluation period, and we'll talk about 8 leadership characteristics that I look for as we're going through and building our leadership council. All right, so 8 leadership characteristics. First one, I always look at body language, right? I got a picture of Pat Mahomes here because that's a guy that you can constantly see, not necessarily wears his emotions on his sleeve, but you can constantly see like this guy is fired up. He's bringing juice. He's trying to build up the guys around him, right? So positive body language. Is he a guy that constantly wants more, right? And what I mean by that is, okay, when I get to the end of a tough workout, we had 10 110s today to finish the day. All right, is it a kid that's hanging his head, bent over at the waist, huffing and puffing, or is he a kid that's standing up, encouraging everybody else? Hey, let's keep going. Let's go from there. What kind of body language is he putting off? The big thing I always say is we don't want guys that are woe is me, right? So you can see I put on there, no woe is me. So, okay, great. We had 10 110s. All of a sudden I tell you, hey, we got overtime. We got 2 more. Are you the guy that hangs their head, or are you the guy that's like, okay, great, let's get it? And one of the things that we always had with our program with Coach Herman, we always talked about ringing the bell, which ties back into the military, to Navy SEALs training. Don't be a guy that rings the bell. Ring the bell is basically quitting, right? If tough gets going, you keep going, right? Because everybody around you is going to feed off of what you're putting out. So don't be a guy that rings the bell. So that, again, goes back to the first thing I look at is body language. Okay. Second thing, is this person a goal setter, right? It's easy as a coaching staff to sit down there and teach you how to set goals, right? We have a system that we use called the SMART system that basically lays out, are they goals that are attainable? Are they goals that are reachable? Going through our SMART system like that. But knowing that a kid can now, on his own, make his own personal goals, right? We talked to our kids the last couple of weeks about anybody that's good at anything knows the answer to, okay, if I'm a good bench presser, okay, hey, what's your bench press PR? If you can't tell me, then you're probably not a good bench presser. Hey, what's your grade in math? If you can't tell me what your math grade is, there's probably a good chance you're not doing well in math. So if you're good at anything, you usually know the answers. So that goes back to that same as somebody having personal goals. If you tell me, hey, I'm a 325 bencher, but coach, by the end of the season, I'm 340. And I hadn't had to pull that out of you. That's just something that's ingrained. That's a great leadership characteristic. It goes the same with team goals. If I ask one of our players, hey, what's a team goal for next year? If they say, oh, we want to go 500. Okay, well, maybe that might be an attainable goal, but it's not a great goal, right? And sometimes you ask those questions and you don't get any answer back at all. So it goes back into, are they a goal setter? Do they have personal goals for themselves? And can they also set some goals for the team that kind of have marks that they've laid out and really thought about? And are they taking action to reach those goals? Next one, right? Are they a supportive teammate? You see it all the time where you've got we're in a sport that's alpha male, hyper competitive, and that's great. It should be, right? At the end of the day, it's 1 versus 1 in your competition, 11 on 11. And you're sitting there and saying, my team's going to be your team. I'm going to do my job and keep you from doing yours, right? But at the same time, within that idea of machismo and alpha male that we're working on, you have to know that you can lean on your brothers and you can support your teammates. So is it a kid that goes team first? Like if we're doing a competition, we're running what we call a man maker at the end of practice. We go out there, we put all the kids on the track, run a 400 full speed, right? He might be the first kid that finishes. And then he goes and stands off to the side and just starts getting his breath back, grabs a shot of water, whatever. Or is he the kid that the second he finishes, he turns back around and he goes, finds the slowest kid and comes jogging up trying to coax that kid to finish strong, right? That's the kind of kid we're looking for. Team first, putting the teammates over himself. One of the sayings that we always use is me over we, right? Am I a guy that puts myself behind the team and I put we over me? So supportive teammate. And then I put up there a spark because one of the analogies I always use for the kids, right? If you're a teammate who's constantly trying to feed others, there's going to be a day where, you don't have it. You're not feeling it. You're tired. You didn't get enough sleep. You stayed up late studying for a test. You didn't have anything to eat. You rushed out of bed that morning. And you're going to rely heavily on those guys around you that are constantly bringing juice to feed off of. Right? So those days that you don't have it, you're looking for a spark to light your own fire. So what I always tell our kids is you need to constantly be that spark. So those days where I'm not feeling it, that doesn't work, right? The I'm not feeling it guy gets beat. The idea is those days where I'm really not feeling it, it needs to turn into I look at my teammates and I'm the spark for them, so I got to do my job. So it goes back to that same kind of supportive teammate there. Internally motivated. Again, I think there's an old saying about motivation that it lasts for about 5 to 6 minutes and then the rest of the game's going on, right? So I use Kobe Bryant as an example here with his Mamba mentality. It was a great book. It's a great read. And constantly what I try to put into our players is if you're not a guy that's internally motivated, whether it's in football, whether it's in math class, whether it's in your job that you just picked up at McDonald's at 16 years old. Like if you're not internally motivated to push yourself and to push others around you, you're not going to get very far in this life. You're not going to be very successful. And so we constantly look for that kid who is pushing themselves in all aspects, not just in the weight room, not just in football, but is constantly looking to better themselves and then better those around them, right? And in doing so, it takes little as the coach. I can feed you a little bit here and there, but it doesn't take very much to get you going. You're happy to be there. You sprung out of bed. This is how you're attacking the day. And then ultimately, in doing so, you're now holding yourself accountable to the team, which I think is a big deal. And you can see, as that quote says right there, it's a constant quest to try to better yourself today than you were yesterday, and a better tomorrow than you were the day before. So it's that constant gaining a step every single day. I'll tweet it out all the time, hashtag one more step. right? 1% better. That law of just gaining every single day. Number 5, I put Sam on here because I thought this was one of the things that basically when I read this one off and I was putting it on there, when you can hold the attention of your teammates, that's somebody that's being looked up to. I have not been around. I'm trying to think about saying this the right way, but I haven't been around a bigger competitor and a better leader than Sam Ellinger. So I was there all 3 years except for his last year. So when he came in as a freshman, I watched how a lot of these older kids would look at Sam and look to him for strength and look to him for guidance. And this kid's 18 years old and has only been there for 6 months because he got there early in the spring. But being a quarterback, being in that position, you're expected to lead. And that's what I thought he did a really good job of. Again, it goes back to the idea of your teammates have to expect you to be the leader. And then at the end of the day, you're not a leader if you don't have followers. If people aren't looking to follow you, then you can't really call yourselves a leader. And that's what I thought, again, Sam did a great job of. He wore that badge of honor with pride, being the leader of the Longhorns, and put a lot of stock in that, and then obviously fed that into a lot of other guys that ended up becoming better leaders just from being around him. Number 6, high standards for the team and yourself. I got a clip I'm going to share here in just a second, but again, it goes back to if you're a guy that doesn't expect to win all the time, I'm going to go ahead and say you're not a great leader. And everything that we do, whether I'm playing chess, checkers, scheming for a football game, I'm planning to win. The old saying that if my grandma and I sat down and we were playing chess together, I'm about to, wear her out on the chessboard. So that mentality of trying to win, but then also doing your job to the highest available to your ability, being accountable to the team and then having respect for your teammates. This clip I think is a great one. I love Peyton Manning's kind of selfless, the way he carried himself throughout his career. And I think this clip that I'm going to play real quick kind of solidifies that as a whole. And hopefully it'll let me, there we go. So I'll stop it right there. But, the thing I really liked about the clip is what they both just said there right at the end. When you're a good leader and you have high standards for your team and for yourself, I mean, there are squabbles like that. Obviously, you heard some colorful language right there getting blurped out. You saw another offensive lineman come to Jeff Saturday's defense and tell Peyton just to go sit down. But, it's like he said, hey, we're good. We're good. Well, I'm just making sure we're on the same page. And like they both said right there, hey, you said what you got to said. You and your teammate are holding each other accountable, and then you put it to bed and you move on. So I love that clip. I loved, obviously that Indianapolis Colts went on to win the Super Bowl that year. So really cool tidbit right there that, again, was going through, I believe that was a coaching life with Tony Dungy. So really cool back and forth right there. Number 7, right? It goes back to kind of what just got hit on there, but communicates well, right? You are the eyes and ears of the coaching staff as a leader, right? So whether that's your captain, whether that's your leadership council, they are your eyes and your ears when you're not around as the coach, right? So on the field. They're a coach-like presence on the field. They can give you that feedback, and they know the pulse of the team more so than we do as coaches a lot of times, right? So what we're relying on is that those leaders can come back and communicate with us, basically letting us know, hey, where do we stand with the team right now? Communicating any issues. Hey, in the locker room, this, that, and the other is happening. And again, we try to tell our kids, it's not snitching. Holding each other accountable is how you become a better team. And so as we go through, we've had some issues in the past where, hey, things are going missing in the locker room, or, maybe there was some graffiti done, or, hey, this and this is being said. Yeah, these are all problems that can fester and become something really bad if you don't have that communication from your leaders. One, to try to put a stop to it themselves, and then two, if they can't, come back and get coaches involved. And that goes back to that last point of being a problem solver, right? It's easy to constantly be that person that says, oh, hey, coach, this happened. Hey, coach, this happened. Sooner or later, I'm wondering, okay, well, if you're a leader, what are you doing about it? Why are you constantly having to come to me? Why aren't you fixing these problems? And so we try to empower those leaders to really feel like, okay, if you're a guy that's solving problems, great. Let me give you some more tools to help you do that. If you're trying to be a leader and you can't solve problems, well, let me teach you how to be a problem solver in some of those situations where you can diffuse things before it ever has to get to me. And again, it goes back to that idea that when the team is coach fed and player led, now you've got a whole other animal that when you're out there on the field and you're coach-like, and we've got, 11 coach-like minded kids out there playing, as hard as they possibly can, you got a really good chance for success. That brings me into my last one, right? A leader has to want to be coached, right? A player that's passionate but not emotional, right? I put that in there because we've all seen those players that just blow up and lose their cool over something that, maybe they had absolutely no control over. Right. So one of the things we talk about is we want our kids to be passionate. We want to see you get excited when plays are made. We want to see you be upset when things don't go your way, but it can't be the ebbs and flows that constantly do this in a football game. We need to be somewhat level-headed so that we don't lose, play one in the game doesn't affect play 65. Right. So we want to constantly talk to those kids about being passionate but not emotional. And then it goes back to that first point, I want to be coached. A great player, a great leader is going to constantly seek correction. I had another clip. I just tried to keep from making this a Peyton Manning highlight show, but he's got another clip where he talks about, I don't care if you're a 24-year-old quality control coach, or if you're, the 45-year-old quarterback coach, or the offensive coordinator. If I'm out on the field and I'm working, I want you to coach me, and again, that goes back to great leaders. They want to seek correction, and they know that they don't have all the answers. A guy like Peyton Manning saying that a 24-year-old could help coach him up. I mean, that goes to show, like, if he sees something wrong or he feels like something's wrong, he wants to be seeking that constant correction and have some answers. And then again, it goes back to that same point we just talked about, a guy that plays with absolute passion and not emotion. Don't wear your heart on your sleeves, but also, enjoy the game, have fun, because, it's too short to sit back and say, you didn't leave it all out on the field and you didn't play with an absolute fire or passion. One of the clips I put on there on the right, that picture was from our spring game in 2019, and Caden Stearns was actually not playing in that spring game. He's coming off an injury. But I put that in there because he's constantly sitting there during that game. I've got a headset on, just hearing calls made, making small corrections on the sideline. But, Caden's sitting there and constantly like, hey, coach, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing this. So a guy not even playing, where he could be sitting around, just joking around on the sidelines, just having a good old time, waving at fans and all that. I mean, I think that there was 50,000 fans for that orange and white game that day. He's sitting there constantly seeking correction, not even playing in the game, which again goes back to why a guy like that played a lot of snaps for the Denver Broncos this year as a rookie. But that's a great example of a kid that was seeking correction and was seeking answers when he wasn't even playing in the game. All right, so you've identified your possible leaders. What's the next step? Now what? Okay, so we get into our leadership building phase. So in my mind, that first phase of identification is usually going to happen in the month of January, sometimes December and January. Now, as you're getting into February, March, April, May, really your spring season, that's when you want to start building those leaders up, right? So you make this now about growing those potential leaders, not excluding everybody else, but really once I've honed in on those 12, 15, 16 kids. Now I want to grow that potential of them being one of my leaders while still trying to impact the rest of the team. Okay, so how do you build leadership? Personally, I think leadership is a skill that is developed. I think some people are more inherently called or led to lead others. I feel like from an early age, that was kind of something that my parents instilled in me. But again, that wasn't something I was just born with. I think that was a skill that was instilled in me at an early age. Maybe that's because I was an older brother and trying to lead a younger brother, what have you. But being a part of sports teams early on in my life, I felt like I constantly wanted to be a leader and be out in front. But again, if that's a skill, it's like anything else: bench press, squat, throwing a football, catching a football, tackling. Those are all skills that have to constantly be taught and repeated. So if leadership is a skill, how are we teaching it? So we have to find those leaders, have to teach it. We have to give them opportunities to rep and repeat being a leader. We need them to have chances to lead without the backing of a coach, right? So give them opportunities. Hey, let them take the reins and let me sit back. Now, that doesn't mean there's no more corrections or communication, but it's just like anything. If you're teaching your son or daughter how to drive a car and you're the one always steering the wheel, well, the second you get out, they don't know what they're doing. So it's constantly teaching, right? Not necessarily from afar, but giving them a chance to lead without backing, and then giving them the communication and correction that comes from that in more of a closed door setting. And then it goes back to, again, what I was just saying earlier about being coach fed and player led. Taking the advice of the coach and now watching those players take those leadership skills and apply them into a different setting. Okay, so I start by talking about this. This is one of the things that we did at Hardin-Simmons University during my time there as a special teams coordinator, and I thought this was awesome. We had a leadership council. I know this has been done a heck of a lot of ways, where sometimes it was voted on by players, sometimes it's been selected by coaches. But we as a staff basically went together and we highlighted eight going to be seniors, 4 going to be juniors, and 2 going to be sophomores. And again, it didn't matter at this point in our program if they were the best players, the worst players, average players. We were looking for the best leaders that we thought of through our evaluation that could lead our team. And so what we did with those selected few right there, so that was 14. What we did with those 14 is we basically would bring those kids in, tell them they had been selected, constantly give them recognition, as you can see there on point number 4, and then make them the eyes and ears of the staff, right? So any issues that were going on at that point, like in the off season, hey, what do we want to do on Friday? It's competition day. They helped us select the competitions. If we were doing something going into the week, like a travel week, hey, we've got these 3 options for food. What do y'all want to do? We gave them a lot of opportunity to have input because, again, we want it to be their team as the leaders, right? So if they were going to work as our eyes and ears, we needed to give them that carrot of, well, why am I going to be on the leadership council? 1, we think you have the potential to be a great leader. 2, we want something invested, so we're giving you opportunities to be invested in this. One of the things that I really liked is every single week, our head coach, Jesse Burleson, would get with the staff, basically lay out, hey, here's our goals for the week. Okay, staff, this is our meeting. It's over. Now I'm going to go meet with the leadership council. So they would have scheduled meetings weekly where they would come in and they would sit through a leadership lesson. They would do a team kind of like, hey, let's check the thermostat. How's the team doing? Let me check in. Hey, I've got questions on this guy, and this guy. What are y'all seeing? What are y'all hearing? And in that way, again, any issues that could arise as a coaching staff, we were able to get out in front of those things and not have it be something that's biting us on the behind as we're getting out, getting going with things. And all of a sudden you have a kid quit or a kid not feeling it anymore. That way we had, again, eyes and ears in the locker room when we weren't in there that we were getting information back from. And then again, it goes back to those kids that we selected for the leadership council. We wanted to constantly give recognition. Like we wanted to set those kids apart. So those extra meetings, some extra gear. I've seen even at times where, going through an off-season program, if you're on the leadership council, you wear one color shirt, everybody else wears the other color. So there's like a separation that is visible through all of your workouts, right? So for example, with us being at Westwood, it'd be every kid's in a white t-shirt except for the 12 we've selected or 14 we've selected, and those 14 are in an orange t-shirt. It sets a cultural divide that you see right now based on t-shirts where, hey, those kids are dressed differently for a reason, and it sets those kids apart. And in doing so, we always thought it was a cool thing where now, let's say you've earned your stripes as a guy that wasn't a leadership council guy, and the leadership council basically votes you on. Okay, now we add more orange shirts, and essentially now you become the other way, where now if I'm a guy with a white shirt, well, why am I one of the only ones with a white shirt still on? And that way you kind of build your team and your culture development. Then that last point, just with those leaders, one of the big things, we wanted the leaders to be a conduit to the rest of the team to spread the word of our core values, right? So at Hardin-Simmons, our core values were toughness, discipline, and effort. We wanted to be the toughest team that you ever played, the most disciplined team, and we wanted to play with the most effort and play hard no matter what. So with that mindset, that leadership council, their job was to take that message and to constantly spread it to the team, so that as I walk past one of the leaders, hey, give me our core values: toughness, discipline, effort. Boom, they can hit them on the head every single time. And in doing so, now that spreads to where I walk past, hey, the third string kicker, hey, Joey, what's our core values? Toughness, discipline, and effort, coach. Perfect, man. Have a good day. Right? So just little things right there where those kids in the leadership council were really the conduit for us to build on those core values. Right? One of the things that we try to teach those kids early and often, right, was when you have influence, this is what a leader with influence has. They give what they don't have to. They care for others. They grow continuously, live authentically, right? So whatever you say you're going to do those things, right? You're going to empower others. You're going to manage the hardships that are going to constantly come up, whether through a game, through life, through academics. You're there, and then you're going to serve with humility, right? We didn't want a kid that, on the leadership council that we would have to sit down with constantly, like, hey, man, like, I get it. You're winning the competitions, but you can't just bang your chest in front of everybody all day, right? Again, being humble, being, living with some humility as we're going through things. And one of the things that I laughingly, I think I actually tweeted it out a couple of days ago, but, one of the things that Coach Burleson used to hit on was that being a great leader was kind of like putting your shopping cart back when you're going to HEB or to Walmart or any of these places. Do you have to? No. Is anybody going to hold you accountable if you don't? No, probably not. Is it easier to, put your groceries in the back of your car and then just pop it up on the curb and leave it there? Absolutely it is. But a great leader doesn't look for the easy way. He looks for the right way. And the right way is to take it back, put your card in. So I challenge you, next time you go to the grocery store, to just watch how many people can't manage to take their cart back and put it back in the rack like the others. Okay, the battalion draft. I told you I'd hit on this a little bit. I've got more details on this. Again, if anybody has questions or wants to email me, I can give you a little bit more details, because I think this is an awesome off-season tool. And this is one that we started back in 2013 at Hardin-Simmons, the one that we currently carry over to Westwood now. And we did something similar when we were at Texas. But essentially, we selected the leaders to be the captains of the team. So whether you had 6 teams, 8 teams, sometimes we had as many as 10. And then those leaders are actually the draft team or the captains for their team that'll draft their competition teams. At Hardin-Simmons, we actually sat it all in a back room. We set up a little draft board. Each team had their own little table. They'd go up, they put a name on the board, so, similar to doing like a fantasy football draft or anything like that. And they drafted, 1 down to 97 on the roster. Everybody from the whole team was given a number. They went up there and they drafted the kid, pulled him off, put his name up there. It became a big deal. And we made this a daily competition, right? And so things were head-to-head. Things were full team. Things were best score overall, first, second, third. We had all levels of competition that were always ways to get points. And then we assigned each team a coach that kind of just worked as an official or a mentor for those leaders that were on that team. And really their main job was to manage those kids with grades. So it was just another kind of accountability measure, especially in college, to just kind of keep on our kids and make sure we weren't having kids that were getting into some grade trouble or getting behind in classes. And the one thing that I really liked is we made everything a competition. So your attendance, were you on time for workouts? If you were, great, you lose no points. If you show up late, you lose a point for your team. If you don't show up for a workout, you lose 2 points for your team. And so we constantly track. So you'd have one of the best athletes on your team, but he can't hardly show up for workouts. Well, you look up and he might have earned you 20 points for competitions because he's one of the biggest, strongest, and fastest. but he's lost you 25 points because he doesn't come to half the workouts or he always shows up late. Another one we really hit on was grades, right? For example, if you got an A in a class, great. If we're expecting to hold you to this high standard of earning an A, you get 5 points for every A that you earned. For every B, you get 3 points. For every C, you got 1 point. For a D or an F, you lost 10 points because that's how important it is to pass your classes, right? So we constantly harped on guys, hey, losing 10 points on an F is just like what happens when grades come out and all of a sudden, oh, hey, he can't play this next semester, or he can't play these next 6 weeks because he failed a class, right? You're losing points for your team. And so that was one that always, you see those big swings of guys that have all A's, guys that have a lot of F's and maybe a B, or guys that have all F's. And then again, competition, we use school spirit as a category, which I always thought was great. Like if we get kids to come out and support, men's basketball, women's basketball, track, softball, baseball, all that support for our like-minded teams and for all of our programs, we always try to garner points off of that. And then one of our biggest one was how do you give back to the community? That one got a little bit more difficult in 2020, 2021, obviously, with everything going on with COVID. But that was always one that I really took a lot of pride in because the team that I was managing or helping, lead, I always wanted them to have the most points based off of what we were doing in the community, right? So all the opportunities we had to give back, I wanted to make sure we were leading in those categories. Okay. And then culture and leadership development class, right? So we do this now. We call it Manly Mondays now. Last year was more about cultural development. But what we do is basically have classroom sessions with our kids to start every morning and workout. So we come in, all the kids are sitting in what we call our war room. We do our just a quick little overview of attendance, make sure who's there, who's not. And then we go hitting into our core values and character development, right? So lessons can be about toughness, discipline, honor, effort, the ones that are our core values here at Westwood. But we hit on a lot of other things too, like integrity, nutrition, just basic building blocks that we want our kids to understand. And so with that, these are just like classroom sessions. We try to hit them early. That way we get a lot of involvement, and it's not at the end of a workout where kids are just kind of droning on and they're drained. They just ran a bunch of 110s. Hey, now I need you to take a knee so I can talk to you for 10 minutes, right? It makes a lot more sense to us to get them there first thing in the morning, get them juiced up a little bit, and then, hey, we're going to have a little 5-minute talk. And we go through. A lot of those have been coach-led, but my favorite ones is when we start to get those leaders to come up and, hey, your topic is I'm going to have you talk about integrity. What does integrity mean to you? And then give me a personal story about integrity. And in that way, it kind of gives those leaders, one, a task to handle in front of the team, but two, also a way to get up and kind of introduce themselves, which is one of the big ones we started hitting on this past year, was just getting the kid up in front of his teammates. Because it's so funny. You see those kids that are, what you're expecting to be your leaders. And man, a lot of them are just shy to get up in front of their peers and just talk. And so that's kind of, again, goes back to the kind of the class and culture that we're dealing with nowadays. Is it's so easy now for a kid to be on his phone texting. It's a lot harder to get up in front of a room and just speak to a whole lot of people. And so we have those kids that are on our leadership council get up, introduce themselves, talk about their likes, talk about their interests, talk about what motivates them as an athlete, why they play the game of football, right? Because sometimes it's funny, you don't realize, hey, my dad and I had a great relationship, and I lost him at 12 years old for whatever example, and he's the reason I play. Or, man, my mom has always loved watching me play football, and I play for her. Or, I work 2 jobs on the side to help my family out, and football is the only fun I get to have. That's why I play. So there's always a story there, and it's always interesting to see. We all play for different reasons. We all have a different why. So having those kids get up and really introduce themselves and kind of spill their guts to their teammates, one, gets them in front of the team, get them to share. But two, you also learn a little bit about your leaders and how they're motivated. And then eventually what we got to this year is every day we call up 4 other kids. So once we got through our leaders, hey, give me 4 other seniors. Okay, hey, now give me 4 juniors. And we went through each class to the point where now we've got 2 or 3 freshmen that'll get up and talk. And it's funny because at 14 years old, hey, what motivates you to play football? Well, I like Madden. I've always played because my buddies play. And it's just kind of funny the answers that you get. But again, they're growing young men, gets them up in front of other guys. And again, the whole process of what we're trying to do here within these classes, getting them up to speak in front of their teammates, getting them to learn our core values, trying to develop them as a young man, and then also a goal is, as we're having these other kids speak, we're trying to develop more leaders throughout this process. So you might be, one of those 2 freshmen that's on the leadership council. Well, heck, there's 45 other freshmen. We're hoping that at some point we can get 10, 15, maybe 20 of those guys to be in that same boat of the leader that you are, at 14. So as we're developing the program, we want to constantly hit on those things as we're growing. All right. And so that brings me to the final phase. Again, there's some more details. I can go into all that. If you've got questions, I'm happy to hit on that. But leadership and action, right? And so what we tell our kids is the leadership that they gain, right? The lessons, the skills that they've developed over this last 5-6 month period, basically from January to May, now takes over in the summer and fall. So leadership and action is what I call this phase. But basically, we're going to try to continue to grow you. But now as a coach, I'm truly hands off. We're on vacation. You're on vacation. You're in the summer workouts. We do our summer workouts led by a performance course. And so as a coaching staff, usually there's only one of us that's on campus at any given time. And so with that in mind, as we're going through the summer, the kids aren't really going to see us every single day. I kind of make it a point to be around more times than not. Same with our head coach. Because again, you all know how that works. When I had off season in high school and we were in the summer, if my coaches were there, I knew they were expecting me to be there. And so I wasn't going to miss. Sometimes what we run into is with kids nowadays, if you don't think your coach is going to be there or you're not going to be, there's not any punishment for it. It's the summer. So I might skip a day here or two. So that's where the leadership really comes into play. And do your leaders lead once the coaches aren't in the room? So it goes back to the same point as summer and fall. And really now I'm going to allow continued growth, but I've got to be able to step back and let you lead in order for us to be successful. Still corrections that can be made, still growth that can be made, but now it's time for the leaders to lead. You have to lead if we want you to be successful. Okay. Again, as a coach, we just all have to realize throughout this process, right? There's continued growth. We're all in different phases of our leadership skills and our development. And again, it's like any other skill. It's like tackling, blocking, anything that we do in the game. We're going to rep it over and over and over again in hopes that we're building a basic foundation to grow from. So the same thing has to go into your leadership training. We are the safety net for our leaders, but we have to have our leaders. They can and they must lead in all factors of our program. And so I'll stop there and just leave it open if we have any questions, Brian. We hit on those. And if not, the next slide just kind of has my information there for you.
Yeah, Coach, we got 3 questions. A couple of them
Absolutely.
sent in ahead of time, and then we got one of you live. First one here is in terms of your leadership program in its entirety. Do you connect this leadership program with other programs in the district? So we're talking maybe like volleyball, basketball, or is it just a football-centric program?
This has been used mainly as a football-centric program, but in my mind, if I have the opportunity to become an athletic coordinator, it's something I'd want to put into an entire program. So where the leadership council may be, 3 volleyball players, 4 football players, 2 basketball players, 2 women's basketball players, and really grow that to where now when we have those council meetings, I'm building leadership into the entire program and not just the football facet of things.
Awesome. Second question I have here is how young would you start this program with your, let's just say football program?
I think you could start it as young as middle school, to be honest. That's one of the things that we've done a pretty good job of. We have 2 feeder schools that only feed into us at Round Rock Westwood. So that's been a benefit. And we're over there twice a week, 3 times a week, trying to instill core values, but also like helping lead the workouts and things over there. So those kids, 7th, 8th grade, 6th grade are constantly seeing us around, which one helps our retention numbers for those kids that are coming from middle school to high school, which is a big deal. And then 2 allows us to kind of start to impart that wisdom into them. So I think, really as they're developing into young men and young women in middle school, I think that's where you can really start to shape that culture and shape those ideas of those leaders.
Awesome. Last question that I got for you here is, when we're looking at all the stuff that you've developed in terms of ideas and all the concepts that you've had in your leadership program, the question is, who has helped you develop as a leader, or what are some resources that helped you develop as a leader?
Well, first and foremost, like I said, the first guy I GA'd for, Bob Fellow, I mean, he gave me a crash course. And when I say crash course, I'm talking, I showed up GAing thinking, okay, it's D3 football. I'm going to come in here and learn how to coach, and then I'll be ready to just go out the door after a year and figure things out. Well, the figure things out happened week one, right? So we have a 6 a.m. Defensive backs meeting because he was a defensive backs coach. I was helping him out. And so I show up at 6:05 that morning, me and the other GA who was working with the corners, and we got a quick reminder of, hey, 6 o'clock means be here at 5:45. So those little lessons early on in my career, like I said, Jesse Burleson has been instrumental in my life and in my career, kind of guiding me, showing me the right way to do things. I think a lot of times as leaders, it's not necessarily that you have to get up and speak in front of everybody. It's just how you carry yourself and how you hold yourself accountable, that your younger coaches, like me, for example, I was 25 when I was working on Coach Burleson's staff, him 42 with 2 daughters in high school and married. And so I'm sitting there watching what I want to be someday, and I work for him, you know? And so that was always a really great experience. And then Coach Wood here at Round Rock Westwood has really poured into my life, as well as, you know, Coach Herman and the guys I work for at Texas. And so a lot of this, I'm just kind of piecing together from a lot of things that I've seen. And it's like anything. Coach Fellow told me, you know, early and often, in your career, you need to constantly keep a book where you're taking notes. If you have any aspirations to be a head coach, you need a head coach's notebook, right? If anything, you're writing down, hey, I like this, I would do this, or hey, I don't like this, and I would not do this in my program. But learn from others' mistakes. That way you're not getting into similar situations going, okay, I feel like I've been through this, but I don't remember what happened, right? We've got so much stuff going on constantly with scheme, fundamentals, things in your own personal life that if you're not writing stuff down and constantly keeping a notepad of information, then you're going to be behind the 8 ball on those assets. So I would really say that, you know, every head coach I've worked for has taught me something, and then I've got something from them. But obviously the first guy I worked for, Bob Fellow, put a lot into my life. You know, him being on, I believe when I started working for him, I was 22, 23, and he was 68 at the time. So vastly different places in our lives, but he really poured into me on a daily basis. So,
well, Coach, again, I can't thank you enough for joining us in our program here today and joining us for this clinic. And I think your message here with this leadership development program is good for, you know, like you said, any sport, you know, any activity. And I think that's kind of at the core of, you know, this battle of ours, you know, with mental health, is that foundational aspect of relationships. And I think this leadership program not only is going to make your program more successful, but also I think, you know, the educators who are in here listening to this as well is going to help you become a better teacher. Just some of those foundational aspects of building good, genuine, authentic relationships with people and turning those into transformational experiences. So, Coach, again, can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us.
I appreciate y'all having me on, and you hit it on the head right there. Just relationship business is what we're in. So constantly make sure you're checking on your people, you know, take the time to, you know, one of the things that we did 2 weeks ago, it was a Friday. You could tell our kids were worn out. Heck, we just let them go play dodgeball instead of going out and doing any kind of football or running. Just constantly taking care of your kids, making sure they're enjoying things, especially at the high school level. You know, 9 times out of 10, they're playing because their buddy's playing. Right? They don't have the aspirations to play in the NFL, to go to college. They're just playing because it's fun. So make sure we're constantly making it fun.